If you strip world politics down to its essentials, three forces keep reappearing: security, submission, and status. They quietly determine who is protected, who is pressured, and who is expendable. Whether we look at ancient Rome, classical Islamic legal thought, or the current geopolitical environment, the underlying question remains strikingly consistent on what terms is peace granted and who gets to enjoy it. What feels especially visible today is how openly coercion has returned as a tool for drawing the line between those who belong within an order and those who remain outside it. Security is where everything begins. Political systems exist first and foremost to protect themselves. When they feel secure, they can afford generosity. When they feel threatened, they rely on pressure. Rome understood this instinctively. The famed Pax Romana was not a universal peace, but a conditional one. Communities that accepted Roman authority were shielded, those that resisted were punished. Order mattered more than consent, and stability mattered more than moral justification. This logic feels uncomfortably familiar in a world where sanctions, tariffs, and security guarantees are increasingly used, not merely to deter aggression, but to test loyalty. Classical Islamic legal thought approached the same problem from a different angle, but with similar realism. Jurists were less concerned with ideology than with safety, authority, and legal responsibility. Concepts such as Dar al-Aman and Dar al-Harb were not religious slogans, but practical categories designed to manage a fragmented world. What defined these spaces was not belief, but security. Whether treaties existed, whether travel and trade were safe, and whether life and property were protected. Crucially, these categories were fluid. A land could move from hostility to peace through agreement and guarantee, reminding us that status in international life has rarely been fixed or permanent. Submission, in this historical sense, is not synonymous with humiliation. More often, it means acknowledging a hierarchy and operating within it. Rome demanded obedience to imperial authority, not cultural or religious conversion. Islamic jurisprudence demanded respect for treaties and legal obligations, not uniform belief. In today's language, submission appears under softer terms: alignment, compliance, or burden sharing. But the underlying expectation remains. Cooperation brings protection, resistance brings cost. Coercion becomes the mechanism through which order is clarified. This dynamic helps explain the apparent continuity between neoconservative foreign policy and more recent Trump-era realism. Neoconservatives relied heavily on coercion, but they wrapped it in moral language: democracy, human rights, and global order. Trump-era realists rejected much of that rhetoric, yet retained the tool itself. Sanctions, tariffs, and threats of withdrawal were not abandoned. They were normalized and made transactional. The goal was no longer to transform other societies, but to extract concessions and enforce alignment. In both approaches, pressure served as a way of revealing who was with us and who was not. Status is the outcome of this process. Every system discussed here ranks actors, whether openly or implicitly. Rome distinguished between citizens, allies, subjects, and enemies. Classical Islamic law distinguished between lands of security, treaty, and conflict. Today's world sorts states into allies, partners, rivals, and targets of coercion. What makes the current moment feel unstable is the speed with which status can change. Long-standing allies can suddenly face pressure. Neutral actors are forced to choose. Peace feels less like a right and more like a provisional arrangement. Ultimately, what links Rome, classical Islamic legal thought, and the current moment is not ideology, but structure. When shared norms weaken, power systems fall back on conditional order: peace for compliance, pressure for resistance. Neoconservatives frame this logic in moral language. Trump-era realists made it openly transactional. In both cases, coercion served the same purpose: to define the boundaries of belonging. History suggests that such systems can function for a time, but they remain inherently unstable, because security that depends on submission must be constantly enforced, and status, once made conditional, is never truly secure.